Alright, we are ready to begin our next lesson. Today's learning goal is that students will be able to solve equations with multiplication and division. You'll remember that our last lesson we were solving equations that had addition and subtraction. So now we're going to continue with our other two operations that we're familiar with. We're going to use the same principle that we used last time, and that is we're going to use the inverse or the opposite operation to solve for the variable in each of the equations. So if we are multiplying in the equation, then we're going to solve it by using division. And if it's a division problem, we're going to solve it by using multiplication. So we're going to get started with our sample problems. The first sample problem we're going to do is 24n is equal to 120. Alright, so I've gone ahead and written the problem down. 24n equals 120. When we see the 24 in here, we see that there's no operator. We understand that when there's a coefficient in a variable and there's no operator there, then the operation that we're going to be using is multiplication. So this means it's 24 times n. Because it's multiplication, we're going to solve it by using division. And we're going to use some of the information that we learned when we were doing fractions to help us solve that. Since the whole idea of solving equations is to get the variable by itself, we need to remove this coefficient. And since it's being multiplied here, we're going to remove it by dividing the same number. In this case, we're going to divide 24n by 24. Remember that in an equation, whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other side. And so now we have 24n over 24 is equal to 120 over 24. Well, we can simplify this. If we have one number over another number, we already know that that value is equal to 1. So 24 over 24 is equal to 1. And then we know that we can multiply 1 times n, and that's going to simply be equal to n. So we get rid of the 24 on this side by dividing both sides by 24. On this side, this is a fraction. It's 120 divided by 24. I can't do that in my head, so I'm going to go ahead and do that over here. Alright, so we're going to look at this, and 24, we're going to say the 2 goes into the 12 maybe 6 times, but because of the 4 there, I'm going to try 5. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12. And then we subtract and get a remainder of 0. So n is going to equal 5. So if you take 24, multiply it times 5, it's going to equal 120. The second problem that we're going to do is b over 7 is equal to 42. So I've written the problem down. B over 7 is equal to 42. We remember that this fraction bar is the same thing as the division sign, so this means b divided by 7. Because it's division, we're going to solve it by multiplying. We want to get rid of this 7 that's on the bottom here, so we want to multiply by 7. So if we multiply this side by 7, then we need to multiply this side by 7 as well. So if we extend this fraction bar over here, we see that we have 7 times b over 7. And you'll remember in our above example, when we had a number over another number, that it reduced down to 1. So it's the same thing in this problem. We have 7 over 7, and that simplifies to be equal to 1. And so that means we have 1 times b, and so all that's left is the letter b. And that is equal to 42 times 7. And again, I can't do that in my head, so I have to write it down over here. We have 42 times 7. 7 times 2 is 14. 7 times 4 is 28, plus 1 is 29. So b is equal to 294. So if you look back at our original problem, we had 294 divided by 7. That would equal 42. Alright, so our final sample problem that we're going to do is 72 over a is equal to 24. Alright, so in this problem, 72 over a is equal to 24. Again, we notice it's a division problem because we have that fraction bar there. We also notice that the variable is on the bottom. This is going to tell us that this is going to be a two-step problem. Okay, in order to remove this variable from the bottom, we're going to have to do one step, which will bring it to the top on this side. And then the second step is going to remove the 24 and isolate the variable by itself. Alright, so when they have the variable on the bottom of the fraction bar, it's going to be a two-step problem. So the first step, we're going to multiply both sides by a. We want to get this a off of the bottom of the fraction. So we multiply both sides by a. Again, just like above here, in all of these examples, when we had 24 over 24, that equaled 1. When we had 7 over 7, that equaled 1. The same thing happens for a. When we have a over a, that equals 1. And then we multiply 1 times 72, and that's going to give us 72. We're then going to multiply 24 times a, and that gives us 24a. Now this problem looks exactly like the first problem, it's just flip-flop backwards. We have the variable over here on the right side. So we're going to solve it the same way that we did the first problem. You'll see in the first problem, we took the coefficient, the number in front of the variable, and we divided it on both sides by that number. We're going to do the same thing down here. We have the 24 again that's in front of the a, so we're going to divide that on both sides. The 24 divided by the 24, that's equal to 1. 1 times a is equal to a. Now we have the 72 divided by 24. Well, I can't do that in my head, so I'm going to come over here and write that out. "24 goes into 72. That's kind of close. That's 25 maybe going into 75. We rounded them off, so I'm going to try 3 times. 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7, and that one works out. We have a remainder of 0, and so our answer over here is 3. A is equal to 3. So if we took our value that we just found and substituted it back in, this would say that 72 divided by 3 is equal to 24. Alright, so that's it for our sample problems. Go ahead and go on to Moodle, do the practice problems that we have there. If you have any questions, bring those to class tomorrow. Also, make sure that you rate yourself after you do the practice problems using our scale. to denote where your understanding is on solving equations with multiplication and division, and bring any questions you have to class tomorrow. That's it for our notes, so have a great evening.